Many thanks for joining us here on News Desk here on Joy News Multi TV. To our very first story, and the National Executive Committee of the Opposition NPP will later today decide the fate of its General Secretary, Kwabena Ejejapon, and First Vice Chair, Same Crab. Now, this was after the party's disciplinary committee recommended the suspension of the two for misconduct. Joining me in studio now to help us chronicle events thus far is Malik Abbas Dabo of our political desk, and he joins me now with some more on this. So, Malik, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. You have been keeping a close eye on this particular incident, all the things that have happened so far. Now, how did the NPP get itself into this mess in the first place?
It's a long story, but let's try and cut it short. The party went for elections last year, 2014, at a conference in Tamale. In that conference, Mr. Paul Afoko was elected chairman, Kwabena Ejejapon was elected general secretary, various other persons were elected. Now, when they returned to Accra, one of the first actions that were taken by the executive, led by, and you know, if you look at the structure of all of these national executive committees of all of these parties, normally the party is led by the chairman and the secretariat is run by the general secretary. So those two people tend to be very pivotal in the running of the party. Now, when these people returned from Accra, one of the first actions that they took, which created problems for the party, was to try and remove the security persons of the party from the party's head office at the time. The persons who were there and who had been providing the party's head office with security resisted this attempt to remove them and to replace them with some other persons. That created some ugly scenes in the party head office. Then they moved on to try and remove some persons who were appointed. Remember that when they go for elections, normally they don't elect all of the people. Exactly. For example, Deputy General, what's the name, Communications Directors, Nana Kumia's position, for example, his deputies, the Deputy General Secretaries, a lot of those ones are not elected. They are appointed. Okay. When they came back to Accra, they removed some of those persons. Perry Okujeto was one of them. He was Deputy Communications Director of the party. Perry Okujeto and others were removed. And
but some would say for Perry Okujeto, for instance, he was asked to take his accumulated leave.
Well, but that was effectively a removal. It was not just him. The finance director at the time was also removed. There were various other persons who were removed. When these actions were taken, the other executive, remember there are 10 national officers generally, plus, so these two persons, the chairman, the general secretary, took these decisions. The other executive didn't find it acceptable that they were not consulted. And if you remember, Freddie Blay at the time he spoke to the press and said this was an arbitrary action by the chairman and the general secretary. As national officers, they ought to have met, and they ought to have, because that's what the party's constitution says, that if you want to take all of these decisions, you must host steering committee meetings at which all of these decisions would be taken. Freddie Blay at the time argued that no meeting was held, no consultation was done. The general secretary, Kwabena Ejejapon, and the national chairman at the time, Paul Afoko, on their own, in his opinion, arbitrarily took these decisions. So they met and reversed some of those decisions. Okay. Naturally, Mr. Paul Afoko and Kwabena Ejejapon would feel slighted and embarrassed that as leaders of the party, they took a decision, other national officers reversed those decisions, especially those relating to Perry Okujeto and other communications persons that were appointed across the regions. That was one of the things that created serious problems. So the removal of the security persons and then the appointment of these persons. So that created a certain cycle of mistrust within the party top hierarchy at the time. Also looking at the history of the persons themselves. In the 2010 flag bearership race of the NPP, in fact, let's start with 2007. The 2007 flag bearership race itself was characterized by a lot of rancor and bickering. In Legon, for example, that's the University of Ghana where the Congress was held, there was an allegation that Mr. Paul Afoko had been spreading money to get people to vote for one of the contenders, Alan Chilmartin, at the time, because we all do know that Paul Afoko was leading Chilmartin's campaign at the time. That created some bad blood. So they went through that election. Alan conceded defeat. Nanado didn't get the required 51% to go, but Alan conceded defeat, so there was no runoff. Then there were problems. Alan resigned from the party. They talked to him. He came back. Fast forward to 2010, when they went for the flag bearership race again after the party lost the 2008 election. You had Kobna Japan, who is now General Secretary, leading Alan's campaign at that time. So in 2014, when they were going into the election, it was generally believed that these persons were not Nanado's people. Now, when they won the elections and started taking these decisions, those people within the National Executive Committee who see themselves as loyalists of Nanado thought that these people were working to undermine the flag bearers' chances of winning power in 2016. So they started taking positions against them. So you had a cycle of disagreements within the National Executive Committee of the party, where the national chairman would take a decision, and because he does not trust other members of the National Executive Committee, he will not consult them, and he will take the decision. The other members of the National Executive Committee will reverse that decision. This continued until somewhere early this year. It got to a head when the national chairman and the General Secretary went to Upper East Region, and when they went to Upper East Region, there were disagreements. We reported on those disagreements. It was alleged that they went there for a meeting, and when they went for this meeting, they didn't inform the regional chairman of the party at the time, i.e. the late Adam Mahama. Adam Mahama, it was alleged, mobilized some party people to go and disrupt the meeting that was called by Paul Afoko and Kobna Japan. His opinion was that if I am the regional chairman of the party and the national chairman is coming here, and this is what he told us subsequently when we spoke to him on Joy News, that if the national chairman were to come to his region for a meeting, no matter what that meeting is about, as long as that meeting concerns the party, he thought that he ought to have been informed. Be that as it may, he wasn't informed. This meeting was called, and the meeting was disrupted. A complaint was lodged with the police. A few days later, he was attacked with acid, and then he died in the process. When that incident happened, there was a wave of calls by the regional caucuses of the various regions of the party for Paul Afoko and Kobna Japan to be removed from their positions. In spite of all of those calls, the party rallied together and put those things aside. But then the disagreements didn't stop. The flag bearer announced he was going to the Volta region to start his Rise and Build tour. The very day he was leaving for the Volta region, the spokesperson for the chairman at the time, Paul Afoko, issued a statement saying some money in the party had been diverted and that the chairman was committed to ensuring there was transparency and accountability in the party, and that persons who were found to have mismanaged or misappropriated or diverted party funds were going to be dealt with. That report was not accepted because within that week, the chairman himself had called a meeting, set up a 5-member committee to look into allegations of diversion of money. He appointed a former general secretary of the party, Ohininto, to chair that 5-member committee. The question then was, if the chairman himself set up a committee, appoints somebody, Ohininto, to chair that committee to look into a matter, how come that his spokesperson is issuing a statement and saying that he's willing to fight corruption?
But again, we need to note that these persons were being probed or investigated, included now the acting chairman of the party, that says
Freddie Blay. Absolutely. So when that statement was issued, there was a lot of anger within the party because many people felt that why is this guy issuing a statement at this time of day when the flag bearer is in the Volta region engaged in his Rise and Build tour? So that statement dominated the media discussions. I remember I had discussions on it on radio, on TV. We did various stories online all over the place. That dominated the discussion. So the flag bearer returns to Accra, announces he was going to the Eastern region. The day he was leaving for the Eastern region, the General Secretary granted OKFM an interview in which he complained variously about attempts to sideline and to gag him. He claimed in that interview that at various levels and various times when he and the flag bearer had decisions to go to places, on one occasion he went and waited by the roadside. The flag bearer drove past him. They didn't pick him. And he asked the question, what have we done to deserve this treatment in the party. That also dominated all the discussions within the party. At that point, they decided that some people must petition the disciplinary committee. First of all, it was the National Council of Elders that petitioned the disciplinary committee. When that petition went, Paul Afoko's lawyer wrote to the disciplinary committee and pointed out that, look, 2 members of the Council of Elders, Amabuzia and Professor Michael Quay, are also members of the disciplinary committee of the party. So if these people who are petitioning the disciplinary committee are members of the disciplinary committee, they are going to be judges in their own cause. Basic law requires that a man cannot be a judge in his own cause. You cannot bring a matter and be the person to adjudicate that matter. To that extent, they could not submit themselves to that petition. Then 2 other elders, Alhaji Suleimana Yeremia and Alhaji Amin, they sent separate petitions to the disciplinary committee asking that Mr. Paul Afoko be suspended, and they stated various grounds upon which they thought that he had engaged in constitutional violations and infractions and in conduct that they believe would not help the cause of the party. The disciplinary committee looked into this matter, invited him. Variously, he didn't come. His lawyers nonetheless went. They raised preliminary objections to the sittings of the committee. First of all, they said he was unwell. A second occasion, he was unwell. A third occasion, he was out of town. And all of those things. In spite of that, the disciplinary committee recommended that Paul Afoko should be suspended. This recommendation was endorsed by the National Executive Committee. So Paul Afoko was suspended, and then he challenged the suspension. We do know now that he's still in court challenging that suspension. But variously, he's organized, some members of the party who support him, we do know, mobilized themselves from various regions, came to Accra, staged a demonstration. They've been doing a lot of things that they believed must encourage or jolt the leadership of the party to reverse that decision. He himself has held a press conference even before he went to court, saying that what happened was a coup d'etat. It was a violation of the party's constitution, and he's going to court to go and assert that. Now let's move from Paul Afoko. Then you have a certain tripartite. You have Paul Afoko, you have Kobina Japan, you have Sami Crab. Paul Afoko, who was chairman at the time, General Secretary, Kobina Japan, second vice chairman, Sami Crab, who is a former Greater Accra regional chairman of the party. These 3 people have been the persons around whom all of these things have revolved. So it's like the 3 of them versus the remaining members of the National Executive Committee. So some other persons within the party also sent a petition asking that Sami Crab has said that as for him, he will not recognize Freddie Blay as acting chairman of the NPP, because he says to do that would mean to recognize a coup. So he won't recognize it. He won't recognize him. In fact, if Freddie Blay calls a meeting, he said he will not attend. As far as he is concerned, Paul Afoko is still the chairman of the NPP. In fact, when Paul Afoko called his press conference, Sami Crab was there. And when the EC organized its forum, Paul Afoko had been suspended already, but the General Secretary of the party, Kobina Japan, granted an interview in which he said that he still believed that Paul Afoko was the chairman of the party. So these persons who petitioned the disciplinary committee pointed out these things and argued that Kobina Japan is the General Secretary of the party. If the party takes a decision and the General Secretary publicly fails to uphold that decision, that is indiscipline, that is conduct that must be punished. And they cited his media interviews in which he spoke about internal party matters and talk about being sidelined and all of that. And they argue all of these things do not augur well for the party. And for the General Secretary of a party, this cannot be allowed to stay. And then they raised similar allegations against Sami Crab as well. So that is where we are now. We are now being told that the disciplinary committee of the party has made some recommendations. It has recommended a 15-month suspension on General Secretary Kobina Japan and an indefinite suspension on Sami Crab. Remember that only yesterday, Sami Crab was out in the media. He told our colleague Kwacha Frenioma, that he does not care. He does not think that the disciplinary committee has the mandate or the locus to take any decision against him. He accused the founder of the party, Nana Akufo-Addo, of encouraging some hypocrisy within the party, and he wants people to wake up in the morning and come and worship him. Sammy Crab says that is something he will never do.
But let me just ask this. You know, Sammy Crab mentioned these things and the fact that he thinks the party's flag bearer, as Nana Akufo-Addo, is encouraging sycophancy and all. And there have been quite a number of other people who have expressed similar concerns. I mean, from where you sit, it looks like Nana Akufo-Addo against these people. Is that really how it comes across? As a flag bearer, obviously. So one would want you to be working with these executives because you are the one who needs power. So even if you seem to have personal issues with them, you need to set it aside and then push for the agenda of winning elections. But how does it come across to you from where you sit as a...
If you speak to party persons, and we spoke to Mustafa Hamid, who speaks for Nana Addo yesterday, what he told us was, let's look at the history of the persons complaining. Nana Addo was flag bearer in 2008. That was when McMenu was national chairman of the NPP. Nana Ohininto was general secretary. Did the party have all of these disagreements? He says the party did not. In the 2012 elections, Nana Addo was flag bearer. He was elected in 2010. You had Obechebe Lamte as national chairman at the time. You had Kojo Use Sir John, who was general secretary. Did these matters come? So why is it that Nana Addo was able to work with Ohininto and Makimenu? He was able to work with Jake Obechebe Lamte and Sir John. But that same Nana Akufo-Addo, who is accused as promoting and encouraging sycophancy, is unable to work with these other national officers. Hamid's argument is, in his opinion, it is rather these persons who are the persons creating the problems within the party and not the flag bearer. But of course, he speaks for the flag bearer, and so you don't expect him to say anything otherwise. What is troubling for those of us observing politics is, even before the elections, it was said variously that Kwabena Agyapong and Paul Afoko will not help Nana Addo's cause. I have spoken to party people who told me that before they supported Kwabena Agyapong, and remember that some of the people who were against them, a lot of the party members, members of parliament, regional chairmen, all of those people who are supporting them, who were supporting them and are no longer supporting them, said even before they took their decision to support them, they asked the flag bearer, and he said he didn't have any problem. They were entitled to support them. I've spoken to many members of the party, leaders of the party, respected members of the party, who told me they went to consult with the flag bearer. Look, we want to support these persons. This is what we hear. We hear that they have a certain agenda to scuttle your 2016 campaign in order that in 2020 they can bring their preferred candidate. Do you entertain any such fears? The flag bearer pointed out no. He didn't believe that any member of the NPP would want to scuttle his campaign. And this is what they tell me, that this is what the flag bearer told them. So if the flag bearer had no problems with any member of the party supporting Paul Afoko, Kwabena Agyapong, Sammy Crab, and the rest of them when they were contesting the flag bearership, and in fact, they used his name during their campaigns, because we had interviews with Paul Afoko, Kwabena Agyapong, at which all of them insisted that they were determined to make Nana Addo president. It cannot then be the case that after they were elected, he wants to get them out. If he wanted that, then he would not have encouraged anybody to support them in the first place. Remember that in that election, he didn't outwardly campaign for anybody or support anybody. He tried to stay in the middle of the elections so that the party itself would take its decision. So if you talk to party people, they will point out that Sammy Crab's allegation is unsustainable, is unsupported by the facts.
Right, quite interesting there. But now the party is going for an emergency congress next weekend. What are we likely to see happen there?
Well, I expect that the party will unveil its campaign for the 2016 election next year. It will adopt a number of motions. It's still unclear at this point whether it will use the Article 10 processes to remove Paul Afoko and the rest of them, because Paul Afoko has been arguing that relying on Article 4 of the Constitution, which talks about suspension,
only an emergency Congress
is
can
unconstitutional.
actually
Absolutely.
get him out.
But if they go to an emergency Congress and they want to use Article 10, what they will do is get 40% of the people who voted for Paul Afoko to vote and say they no longer wish to have him as the national chairman of the NPP, and he's removed in accordance with the processes laid out in Article 10 of the Constitution. It is unclear at this point whether they will resort to that, but if these disagreements continue, I would imagine that the party would decide to use Article 10 to remove any persons they think are stumbling blocks to the party's campaign. So
should that happen, I'm thinking that the acting national chairman is going to be made substantive.
Absolutely.
Should that happen?
Absolutely.
Who replaces him in that vacant slot there as the first vice chair of the party?
It would depend on what the party will do. If the party goes to Congress, an emergency Congress as it is planning for Sunyani on the 19th, it may actually decide that, look, we are removing these people and Congress is adopting people. Congress may actually decide that it is appointing somebody as chairman. Congress can take that decision. Remember that Congress is decision making of the party. Yeah. That Congress can decide that, look, we have removed Paul Afoko, we are putting somebody there as national chairman. Let Freddie Blay remain his first vice chairman. Congress can decide that. Congress can equally decide that we have removed Paul Afoko, we are making Freddie Blay substantive chairman, we are appointing somebody else as first vice chairman and second vice chairman and the rest of it.
Right. Malik Abbas Dabu, many thanks for your time here on News Desk, and Malik Abbas Dabu. He's with myjoyonline.com. He's the editor for myjoyonline.com, and he's also a member of our political desk here on Joy News. We'll be bringing you much more on this. We'll be speaking to some political analysts as and when we do have them. We are having a bit of a technical challenge, but as and when it is rectified, we'll bring you some more on this particular story. But away from that, we can do some more stories. And the Kolebu Senior Staff Association has passed a vote of no confidence in Chief Executive Officer Dr. Gilbert Buckle and is asking the CEO to resign. Now, the association says Dr. Buckle has performed below expectations since he took over as head of the hospital. President of the association, Charles Ofer Palm, has been speaking to my colleague Derek Akosam.
Things are not going well in Kolebu from so many points of view. Strategies all over the place. But the irony and the strategy is that we just increase charges fee for almost 300%. And you ask yourself, where is the money going to? Why are we not still be able to provide supplies? Why are we not being able to provide reagents for the lab so that people will come and access that conditions, that service, or pharmacy, or the equipment are broken down? Things are running out of funds. And it's better we save the boats from sinking.
So what you're saying is that your stores have run out of stock. So how do you operate?
Oh, sometimes they don't have, you don't do, or you improvise. Some of the things I don't want to say on air because I don't want to pay the confidence of any clients or patient that comes to Kolebu. It's sad. If you work here and you come here and there's no medicine at 12 midnight and there's no pharmacy that's open at night, how do you survive? I mean, how many people might have died for that? I don't want to scare people. But if you come and the doctors need to do a lab and there's no reagents at 12 midnight, which private lab is working? It's that. We see what we've noticed is that we had a change. And some of the things we said in the change, they are being repeated. So the question you ask yourself is that, what is going on?
I think that the CEO is running the facility down and is incurring some debt that the government must pay later on. And I also know that you have passed the vote of no confidence in him. What exactly does it mean?
The vote of confidence means that you send a strong signal to the chief executive that he's not performing. He's a non-performer. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the senior staff association is saying that resign because you cannot do the job or you are not doing the job.
What happens if he does not heed to your call for him to resign?
Well, I don't think it's his interest to say that, because first of all, I want to state clearly that you cannot rule on people who say they don't like you. Not because we don't like him, because we don't like him, but we try to establish why we don't like him. Now, if the board has a performance review, they should go and check. We are challenging them. On what grounds do you measure even a person? Apart from that, some of the things that we see is still continuing.
How many days, weeks or months are you giving the CEO to resign?
We are not giving any ultimatum. We have said that we've met now, and this is what we are telling him, that this is the signal we have killed to him. It's up to him. If he says, well, me you may I won't go, then we will see from there. If we had to wait to this time, I must be honest that we have taken a lot of time.
You're still watching News Desk here on Joy News Multi TV. We're taking a break. When we come back, we'll bring you some more stories.